Your support helps us bring you programs you love. Go to wyomingpbs.org, click on Support, and become a sustaining member or an annual member. It's easy and secure. Thank you.
The state of aviation in Wyoming, next on Wyoming Chronicle.
Funding for Wyoming Chronicle is provided in part by the Dragisevich Foundation, supporting the work of the Wyoming Women's Foundation.
Aviation is critical to the economics of a state such as Wyoming. Our rural setting creates great distances between our cities that make transportation often difficult. Without air services, a lot of the basic amenities and things available to the normal citizen wouldn't be afforded.
We're very isolated up here in northeastern Wyoming. Sheridan's tough to get to for several months of the year, given the severity of our winters and frequent road closures that we deal with. So being able to fly businesses and business professionals in and out is huge. We know that having commercial air service back here in Sheridan results in about $24 million of economic stimulus directly to the community. And that's a huge number, no matter what part of the state you're in or what industry you're in. It's a broad spectrum. It touches tourism, touches minerals and extractive industry, it touches retail downtown, it goes right across the board.
Aviation Aircraft's a small airplane manufacturer. As you can see, we manufacture the Husky aircraft, the Pitts aircraft, which are stunt airplanes, as well as the Eagle aircraft, which is a home-built stunt aircraft. Before 9/11 happened, we had about 118 employees, and so we were, really a big impact economic-wise on this area. Right now we're at 40, but that doesn't mean we don't plan on getting back to a plane every 3-day schedule and 118 employees.
Here in Sheridan, we lost our commercial air service for about 8 months in 2014, 2015. We know that about 60% of our passengers coming in and out of Sheridan County Airport on commercial air service are visitors. We don't want to see those passengers leak out to Billings or Rapid City or other larger regional airports. We want them to stay here right in the community, and that's what's happened. We've seen people return in large numbers since the return of commercial air service.
The possibilities of air service are really unlimited. We typically associate aviation with the airlines, the majors, flying point-to-point people. Probably second to that, most common is cargo or freight, be it FedEx, UPS, hauling packages all across the world. Some of the less known, obviously, is the emergency services, law enforcement, search and rescue, air medevac. Government agencies are significantly dependent upon aviation, from Fish and Wildlife Services, National Parks, Forest Service, BLM.
The helicopter is extremely important for the WYDOT avalanche program. Some of our infrastructure, that's how it's deployed and retrieved. Helicopter bombing for avalanche mitigation covers a lot of ground very quickly and will reduce closure times significantly. And what that does is it keeps everyone out of avalanche terrain, and we can cover a large area very quickly. Everything we do, from the maintenance to the avalanche mitigation, it's all about public safety. It's all about keeping the roads open, safe for the traveling public.
One of the things that people may not realize is that we have a very large VA hospital here, and there are folks that come in and out from all over the country here to use those facilities. Or if you need medical attention and you've got to get down to a big hospital in Denver, we have a very quick and efficient and affordable option for people who need those services as well. So the medical industry is touched by it, and it's one of those situations where you may not know you need it until you do.
Tremendous amount of agriculture is supported by aviation, especially here in the state of Wyoming. From crop dusting to seeding to planting.
Usually they would use the aircraft to fly and survey over cattle or check out their crops, fields, stuff like that. We also see customers such as the Bureau of Land Management type things, search and rescue.
With helicopters, when you're searching for somebody that's lost or hurt, you can cover a lot of ground with multiple spotters in technical terrain very quickly. Improved response time and getting potentially very injured people to the hospital faster.
Aviation isn't just for the elite. It's not only a luxury. It's an industry that we all depend on and can benefit from. Probably the most significant thing that we can do is we can be a mentor to the rising generation. There is a lot of excitement and potential and opportunity with this industry if we will take the time to invest into this up and rising generation. Back in the early 1900s, it was said that a city without a railroad was nothing. And coming into the 21st century, I would say that about airports, that a community and city without an airport, essentially in the years to come, will be nothing.
Businesses want a city, if they're going to relocate to Wyoming or the West or our region in general, they want a city with commercial, regularly scheduled air service. It plays a huge part in how we market to prospective companies from an economic development standpoint. And it's helped us secure a few big wins over the last year and a half as well.
We need to make Wyoming a place that families want to live, that they want to raise their kids in. And that includes having access to grandma and grandpa. It includes having access to those trips and vacations, perhaps outside of our boundaries.
And it's our pleasure now to continue the discussion on what aviation means in Wyoming with the director of the Wyoming Department of Transportation, Bill Panos.
Director,
welcome.
It's good to be with you.
Wyoming Chronicle, and the Aviation Administrator, Amy Surdam. Amy, welcome.
Thank you.
We just watched a video, and we want to expand now upon what aviation really means to Wyoming and the state of aviation, if you will. Director Panos, I'll start with you. There's been lots of discussion recently about whether and to what extent air service should continue to be supported in Wyoming. We just saw a video that focused primarily on Northeast Wyoming, but really it's a statewide issue. From your perspective, what does air service really and truly mean to the state for someone who may not be 15 miles or 20 miles or 30 miles away from a commercial air service?
For any state, Wyoming, other rural states around the United States, air service is essential for mobility, for economic development, to attract and retain businesses, and for the citizens in not just Wyoming, but again, other rural states around the country to have a normal life and to be able to travel when they need to be able to go see relatives when they need to be able to go and seek medical care if they need to travel for medical care. All of those things are essential, and commercial air service provides that to some of our Wyoming communities.
And I think our viewers might be interested to know there are really 40 airports in Wyoming. And Amy, you visited all 40 of those airports.
Yes.
Before we'll return back to commercial air service in just a moment. But Amy, what did you learn when you traveled around Wyoming and looked at some of these just general aviation airports and commercial airports?
The biggest takeaway I had was just how different and unique our state is and how different and unique all of our communities are. Each community has its own personality and has its own needs, has its own priorities, and that trickles down into the airports as well. So it was a great tour, and I really enjoyed getting to know Wyoming and its people more.
When we look at commercial air service, there are 9 commercial airports. Does Wyoming need 9 commercial airports? Director, what are your thoughts about that?
Exactly. So we have 40 general, aviation airports or airports in the state. 9 of them provide commercial air service, and we need the 9 commercial airports for a variety of different reasons. One, the unique nature, as Amy pointed out, the unique nature of our communities. Some of them, like Jackson, are very focused on tourism and winter sports and commercial air service from a variety of different places around the country. Other airports, like Rock Springs, provide not only the community of Rock Springs and the surrounding communities of Green River and Rawlins air service, but also the businesses and the mines that are in those areas. Our commercial air service in Gillette is essential for our energy industry and all of the activities that are going on with the energy industry in Campbell County. So each community has a unique need, and many, not all, but many of our communities need commercial air service. And so we have 9 commercial airports that the state has been supporting along with those communities for a number of years now.
And currently the method of supporting is the ASEP program. Amy, do you want to talk about that just a little bit, and where it is today and why decisions need to be made soon about the future of commercial air service?
Sure. The Air Service Enhancement Program is one of the ways that we support our commercial airports, and it was started in 2004 by the state legislature when they recognized the need to continue rural air service. Originally, it was appropriated about $3 million a year, and an account built up to about $8 million after several years. And the legislature at that time said, well, let's reduce the amount of appropriation annually to $1.5 million a year. Through the years, the communities have been using the program, and in turn, the account has been depleted, and several times, 3 different times, the Wyoming Department of Transportation has gone back to the legislature and requested supplemental budgets and has received an additional $10 million over the years to keep the program going. The communities are requesting about $3.5 million a year at this point, and the current appropriation is $1.3 million a year. So as you can see, they're requesting more than is being appropriated, and the account has quickly dwindled down. Starting July 1st, 2019, there will be no further carryover in that account, and WYDOT will only have $1.3 million annually to distribute from that account, and we will not be able to meet all of the needs of the communities at that point.
So what that means then, Director, assuming nothing else happens, and we'll talk about potentially what could happen, the number of commercial airports in Wyoming would be reduced.
That's a possibility. There are 2 things that happen with these dollars that come from the state of Wyoming to these communities that are operating commercial air service. The first is to sustain normal, regular air service. And as you know, our normal, regular air service has been inconsistent over the last few years.
It's a kind word. For many people, seriously, who have depended upon trying to get regular, planned service, it's been difficult.
The other has been really growth markets. So a community will look at, like Cody or Jackson, will look at an area and say, we'd like to be in this area. State of Wyoming, can you provide support and work with us as a partner in looking for new markets for our commercial air service? And so there's really 2 things that the state supports in those communities through the ASEP program, the ASCP program. And because of the economic conditions in the state, we have some choices that we have to make soon, along with our community partners and the legislature, about what the future of aviation will look like in the state of Wyoming.
I mean, someone might ask, if I live in Riverton, why I shouldn't just drive 2 hours to go to Casper to get on a plane? Or if I live maybe in western Wyoming, maybe just drive to Salt Lake. Why is that not a good idea for our state?
Many people do, and in fact our surveying and our discussions with communities, many of our communities do, but there's a couple of reasons why it's important to those communities and important to the state of Wyoming that we have commercial air service here in the state. The first is that we have some of the highest airfares in the United States, 20 to 30% over the national average. It has been increasing for a number of years. That has a lot to do with the deregulation and the availability of pilots and a number of other issues, but it's expensive to fly from Wyoming. And so many of our citizens go to other states, like they go to Billings, or they'll go to Salt Lake, or they'll go to Denver, drive to Denver to get on an airplane. We'd like to capture some of that market. These communities would like to capture some of that market. But the second reason is business retention. Many businesses look to regular air service as part of their criteria by which to choose Wyoming. And so we want to make sure that we do everything that we can to compete with other states and to develop a proper sort of air service that businesses will be attracted to and want to come to Wyoming. The last is the businesses that are here. We want to retain the businesses that are here by having regular commercial air service in those communities that need it. And so I think there is an understanding that there is a need. And so in places like Riverton, in places like Sheridan, even though, let's say, Sheridan or Riverton, there are some options that they can do. When we have found that Riverton, let's say, does not have regular air service, they drive to actually Denver. They don't drive to Casper. They'll drive all the way to Denver to get onto a plane. Sheridan, they'll drive to Billings. They're not going to drive over to Gillette to get on a plane. Now, that's not everyone. I mean, these are statistics that we see and reports that we see. These are trends. So there always are exceptions. But generally speaking, the folks will, for all of those three reasons, places like Riverton, they need airports and they need commercial air service to retain businesses, to attract businesses, to keep some of that market that may go to other places, and to have a regular air service for our citizens and for our businesses in the state.
And can I add to that?
You bet, Amy.
So, and I think it's just a basic quality of life for some people as well. We were in Riverton and speaking to the airport board and the community about air service recently, and a lady called in and she gave a testimony, and she said, I go to Denver for medical treatment once a week, and I've done this for the last year. And because of that medical treatment that I'm able to achieve with this direct flight, I'm able to still live in Riverton where my family is, and I'm still alive. And so I think if Riverton, for example, didn't have air service, that woman wouldn't have been able to get the medical treatment that she needed, or she would have had to leave her family to do so. Additionally, I just had a friend who, Dr. Gross, she's an internist in Sheridan. She just moved to Sheridan in November. She is a young, vibrant, 32-year-old female, single, and the exact kind of people we want to recruit, the exact kind of professionals we need to recruit to our state in order for our state to survive. And I asked her, would you have moved to Sheridan if you wouldn't have had direct flights out of Sheridan? No. I wouldn't have even considered it. And so for our communities to have what we need for our people to stay there and to live there and to have a good quality of life, it's essential.
We hear those stories often.
Yes.
Some would say those are anecdotal stories. Is there data behind the importance of air service to rural communities?
There is, and in fact, we've done some studies here in Wyoming on that very issue. And I think that we have hard statistics. I can let Amy talk about some of those. But states around the country, rural states around the country, have looked at that, and the federal government has performed some statistical analysis. And it is true that, in fact, an investment in commercial aviation, an investment in aviation, creates these kinds of economic benefits, quality of life benefits, security benefits. If you need to if there's an emergency evacuation or we need to get resources into these communities, having strong airports, strong commercial air service is economically beneficial to our state.
Amy, you know the statistics.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So for every dollar that the state is investing in air service in Wyoming, our state receives a $23 return on its investment. And that is through tourism, through payroll tax, through jobs it creates, and through other types of spending. It's a $1.05 billion economic impact to the state of Wyoming every single year. This helps us stay viable as a state. It's absolutely essential. And speaking with entities such as the Business Council and Endow and others, when companies look to recruit to Wyoming and they're looking at should we come to Wyoming and relocate our business here, one of their top criteria is number 1 or 2, the first question, do you have commercial air service that's reliable? And if the answer is no, they don't go to that community.
If I can further that and give you less than or more than anecdotal, I used to be one of those companies. I mean, long before my public service, I used to work in a multinational company, and I was doing siting of our manufacturing facilities around the United States. And it was one of the criteria that were on the top of our list for considering whether to locate into a state like Wyoming, was whether they had reliable commercial air service.
Let's talk about EAS funding. Many of us have read headlines from this administration, President Trump's administration, and even administrations before, that there's pressure on whether to continue that program. That's different than the ASAP program that we talked about just a moment ago. This is federal support that Laramie truly benefits from, and other airports to a lesser extent. What does EAS support mean to Wyoming, and do we expect that to continue?
EAS support from the federal government to our commercial air service in Wyoming has been very important to us over the years, and it's been over the last few years less available and less available because of federal interests are elsewhere, and frankly there's a lot of things that the federal government needs to do for infrastructure around the United States. And so we, the state of Wyoming and other states have had to step up and provide programs like the ASEP program to provide support for and supplement the federal funding that was there previously. 2 airports in our state. Cody Airport, to some limited degree, uses federal support money, but Laramie Airport, the commercial service that's in and out of Laramie to support the University of Wyoming and that great community, they are reliant 100% on those federal supports. They don't have a safety net, and the Air Service Enhancement Program provides that safety net, should they need it.
Worland lost their EAS funding. And is that threshold when it becomes more than $1,000 a seat?
Yes.
A community is at risk of losing. So what does that mean to a community like Worland? Is that something they could maybe get back someday, or is it highly unlikely?
Once a community loses its essential air service, it can never go back on the program. So Worland could never receive essential air service dollars again federally. And then once a community loses air service, they have 90 days to secure additional air service. Otherwise, they lose their TSA. And that's what's happened in Worland. They lost their security. And so it would be very, very, very challenging for Worland to have air service in the future.
So here we are today. Endow has debated whether air service and has decided that air service is certainly important to Wyoming, like we've discussed. And there's a proposal now. $15 million proposal over 10 years, funded through the legislative reserve accounts to stabilize commercial air service in Wyoming. Why is that the best approach? And describe what that approach ultimately really will be.
In the past, our approach has been to individually create agreements between communities and air service providers. And
these would be individual communities doing it, not necessarily WYDOT.
That's correct. And so the state government has supported that through our ASEP program. So there's a cost share of, I think, 60% state, 40% local community. So the state has been providing that support for the last few years. And as you know, it's been inconsistent, the air service around the state. So our performance has been inconsistent. Our program has cost the state about $35 million over the last 10 years to support. And there's other programs that are there, but about that. And so we think that there's a better way, a more efficient way. And so our staff, along with the communities, along with Endow and the Executive Council and the legislature, have been working on ideas for how to make government more efficient, how to get more for the citizens of Wyoming for less cost. And that's where this Endow initiative comes out of, is that conversation. I'll let Amy describe more about the details of it.
So the concept is to purchase capacity. This is a concept that is done in the industry today. You'll see a large carrier such as United purchase capacity from a smaller carrier such as SkyWest to service a smaller market. So we've said, well, what if we could do that as a state partnered with communities? What if we could come together and purchase capacity from an airline, one airline, collectively, so that we're only negotiating one contract with one carrier, and we could have this contract in place for 10 years. Wouldn't there be some kind of advantage and savings that is associated with that? It's almost like bulk purchasing, if you would. And so that's the general idea of the capacity purchase agreement. We've ran many different models, many different scenarios about which communities would participate at, and what year they may or may not come in. And we feel that we could purchase capacity from an airline for our communities for $15 million for a 10-year period of time.
Do your models show then that air service in Wyoming may become less expensive through this model, or will expense still be an issue?
You want me to take that one?
Go ahead.
Okay. Not right away. It'll actually stay about where it is, but eventually it actually will fall. We're going to let competition take place so that those carriers that are not part of the Air Service Enhancement Program will look at those that are, and hopefully there'll be a little private sector competition to drive those costs down. The model eventually does show cost reduction, but not in the first couple of years. But let me tell you what this proposal is not. It is not the state owning an airline. Mm-hmm. It is not that we lease airplanes. We're simply buying capacity for those communities over 10 years at a cost that is less than what they're currently paying, with higher reliability. And these are what we found in surveying our citizens. Reliability is the #1 issue.
Over cost.
The cost is actually the second most important issue for them. And so reliability was the key. And so we can provide, through this proposal, a less expensive service that is more reliable to 9 airports, or to any number. At first, I think the model shows 3 airports will be part of the program at first, but it can be expanded to other airports. But it'll provide more reliable service at a cheaper cost for the state, for the communities, and eventually for the citizens.
For all the reasons you talked about earlier.
Yeah, and additionally, we may very well be able to offer more flights to communities who can support it. So, for example, Rock Springs has 2 flights a day, and they really could benefit from a 3rd flight a day to help increase their business travel opportunities. So that's another advantage. Another advantage is we may be able to influence gate times a little more effectively to where people can meet better connections. So that's another advantage.
I see 5:30 a.m. flights in my future. We just have about a minute left. We've all read, too, about pilot shortages, about maybe there won't be enough regional-sized jets, 50-seaters or 70-seaters or whatever the model calls for. Are those challenges that can be overcome?
They are. I think that some of the airlines are now overcoming the pilot shortage challenge, and the manufacturers of the jets have actually developed over the last couple of years a remanufacture project to get some of these 50-seat regional jets, those which Wyoming would utilize, to extend their life by almost 50% to 100%. And so we will have the equipment. It looks like we will be able to, I think, deal with the pilot shortage issue over the next few years, and I think those are achievable goals for us.
Still expensive for a young person, a young man or woman, to become a pilot.
Yes.
Yes.
That seems like a hurdle. Well, Amy Surdam, the administrator here for the Wyoming Department of Transportation, the Aviation Division, thank you so very much for visiting with us. And Director Panos,
thank you.
We look forward to maybe visiting with you again in the future.
Sure.
And thank you for joining us on Wyoming Chronicle.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.